Happy 2015, everybody. Today is We Had a Dream Day, and I know Andrew's really looking forward to giving you an update of what's been going on. We wanted to bring this out today. Our studio is still not complete. We're waiting on a few lights and cables, and hopefully UPS will bring them to us safe and sound, and we can get those last minutes set up. So I know that today Andrew wanted to do another timeline update, and a lot has been happening, some really good things. And Andrew, do you want to bring the people in to the year of 2015 and just give them an update on everything that's been going on? So much has happened, good stuff. Would you like to let us know?
Yes, we have been having an incredibly amazing year, and what this is updates about is about an understanding of what's been going on in our timelines. As people have been listening to this process of me explaining what's going on, we're understanding that there's multiple things interacting here. And the things are separate timelines, and they have things called timeline incursions, where from one paradox to another paradox is trying to affect an end result date. So something is no longer a paradox. It is a way to uncreate the original paradoxes. And we are interacting in a time where our perceptions and our own self-deceptions are leading us into avenues of creation and exploration. On the 21st of December began the full separation of densities. This separation of density is what are those to light and truth and what are those to the system of domination and control. It is the fork in the road. From December 21st to December 29th, our grids went through a separation of densities. Those that are on the proverbial lightworker side saw a fork in the road that went one way. Those that are still working with the system of domination control and have not resolved their own karma or ancestral karma issues to be in some layer of sovereignty are going to go on the other road. And then each road's going to fork off until the separation of densities is at the most lowest layer of interaction at the human layer. I've been talking about this process for a very, very long time. And now we come to a moment where all these forks in the road, all of these different interactions are here to be perceived through your own perceptions. We must stand in sovereign free will to know what separation of density is, to bear sacred neutral witness to the changes that are around us, and record them in our own methods and manners, so our people in our lifetime know the mystical experience that is going on. So many people have been hit hard this last Christmas that is just saddening to me. But we have all been warned by every different major culture that this is the time of mental change, the time where higher consciousness comes in and challenges us with things like hierarchical order, or patriarchal order, or vaccinations, chemtrails, so on and so forth. We now have this time where we choose not to use the perception, deception filters of the world that's around us, and to allow our own filters of creation and co-creation to come forward and meet all the other entities that have experienced their own truth in their own way. So many people that have come to me as an audience hear truth in my voice and the authentic expression and the creation and co-creation that goes on between me, Natalie, and Danielle. We do this authentic truthful presentation in sacred neutral for a very specific reason, because it'll be a common moral code way to do it, where all beings come to that neutral point and know that they have that right, inherent right, as a living light body being in a DNA skin suit, not in a hierarchical order.
That's so true, Andrew. That's so true. And one of the good things that when we were looking into all of this and you were explaining what you were seeing, is that the actual Earth grid system of the Matrix and the Lightworker grid system, the Matrix rebooted the system without the Lightworker grid intact.
Correct.
This is a pretty big deal. This is the first time this has happened.
That's
And
like the dog shaking off the fleas.
right, and can you please elaborate for the audience, because I think a lot of us, we can see the glimmers and the glimpses, but then after those glimmers and glimpses, there's just so much dirty energy underway, as you say. still floating around. And it gets really hard when you're not in a community where the people are practicing. So you get those glimpses here and there, and you get these beautiful miracles happening. And then all of a sudden, everything just collapses like a ton of bricks on you. And you're like, where did that come from? So can you explain a little bit more why it has been so turbulent, so up and down, and how basically that's just the grid separating each other. It's almost like the rest of the party is just, the drunks are still kind of leaving the people who leave the party last sort of thing.
Good way of explaining it. The system of domination and control has a bunch of beings that are dedicated zealots to hierarchical order. And because when they become zealots to hierarchical order, at times they make the martyred choice to not be the apex of the hierarchical order, but make hundreds of thousands of others at the lower level who have a chance to become the apex of the hierarchical order. Versus light workers who are trying to understand they're not in a hierarchical order and they're trying to create something in the hierarchical order. This means that the system of domination control owned its reality enough that, like the dog shaking off the fleas, told the light workers, go create your own grid. So they used CERN to separate out the densities of those that were actually affecting the system of domination and control's sacred geometry network. And they used a pulse of energy that separated, and left the grid intact without the light worker ticks attached to it. And that's through their perception. Naturally, the light worker energy had to go somewhere else, and it returned to the natural energies of Earth. So you now have two separate grid systems that are running. The light worker organizations now have to figure out how to work together, because the system of domination control is already working together in government, in business, in exchange for value, in lovemaking, and everything else that they've got their fingers in. Now it's time for those that have been doing the good work at all the sacred spaces all over the world since time immemorial, since fraud time was created, so that we would have a chance to do what? Co-create within a system that does not have system of domination control energies as its foundation for taxing you of your energy.
Right, so basically those that are doing the work, working with Earth Mother, we actually now have the opportunity to create our own grid. We have the space, so to say, to do that, because the systems basically shut us out so that we can't affect it anymore. So that was a bit strange. I started to talk about the system of domination and control and the grids, the grid of the matrix and the grid that we now have available to us as those that are working with resistance-free Earth, that our connection, our grid is now being given to us so that we can actually reestablish this with Earth Mother. That was really interesting, Andrew, that as soon as we came to giving that explanation of the freedom that we have, the first time the light worker grid not being intact to the matrix, that our system should crash.
Well, it is in its own way synchronistically humorous, because there was a minute or 2 minutes that were lost there as we were trying to figure out why the program had crashed. But we're back, and we are back with style, going, yes, this system is trying to separate from us, but that doesn't mean it's not going to take jabs at us into our reality. And this is what is going on with so many people out there. For many months I've been telling people about hibernate before the 21st of December. And this is why I was telling you to hibernate. This is when the massive psychic artilleries are coming out of the major military bases, and they are just bombarding city after city after city with heavy-duty depressive energy from people that have been trained in maths to use all different forms of advertising and propaganda and psychic influence to do what? Drain you of your ability to have a good holiday. This holiday wasn't about the spirit of giving. This last holiday was about, oh my God, what are we going to do next year? Everyone's unemployed. It's still, nothing has happened. And yet all those people out there saying the pigs are flying, all of those things that are from the global currency revalue, all of the ones that said it would happen in January, February, March, April, June, July, September, October, November, December of 2012, 2013, 2014, and now they're starting their process over again. And all those...
That's so true, Andrew. I have to right there. I met a few people that they'd been on this RV thing with the Dinar for 9 years. 9 years, these people, these good people who are so clever in other things, really spiritual people, they had this belief for 9 years. And something happened this Christmas. Something happened, and they turned around and they went into meditation, and they got given some truth. They were in a special circle that got set up for them. They were by a fire, and they actually went and meditated on this. They wanted to know once and for all, because they had put everything to the side, waiting for these funds to come in. They had counted on these funds for their incredible projects to save the world. They had so many things that they had going, including, special ways of how they could construct communities and everything. And what came out of this is they actually saw something different. They didn't want to look for 9 years, really truly look, because they were just so counting on it. And they got a different message. And they actually called me up afterwards and they said, we were really upset when you sat down with us and you started to show us a few of the things of understandings in the real world, not what people were, telepathically getting from whichever source, but actually the functionality of the matrix. How would that work? How would that actually happen? And when I explained to them all the different scenarios and understandings from the different countries, they saw something. And then they went with this understanding into the meditation, and they asked the question. And they came up with the same answer you did, Andrew. They came up with the same answer. And that was huge, because imagine putting your life on hold for 9 years.
You're putting your dreams on hold for 9 years.
No, it's the perfect crime.
Yeah.
Imagine what these guys could have done in 9 years if they hadn't counted on what they were being given to and told by all of the sources that they trusted. Do you see what I'm saying?
I have a good metaphor here. When you go and buy a lotto ticket, let's say the Powerball's at, it's $600 million. And the lotto, you get your ticket and you didn't win, and then it goes to $650 million. And then you go and get your second ticket, and you start that dreaming moment. And then a few hours before everyone looks at their ticket, what would I do? Okay, and then it comes again, and no one's winning. Now it's at this big, huge amount, and still no one's won. And then finally someone wins, and it starts over, and you start your process of hope again, and the Powerball builds itself back up. The global currency revaluation is the same thing. Only one person wins in that, and those are the people scamming you.
Yes, that's so true. I remember there was this one website where you could buy dinars, and a bunch of people bought these dinars. The bank wouldn't give them the money. They said that they couldn't transfer the money because this was something noted on their security as a scam. And some people went and bought the dinars, and when they realized it was a scam, they tried to return to the company the dinars that they bought, and the company turned them down and said they weren't real.
Bingo.
Had no proof of, it just wasn't accepted, of course, because they opened up the dinar package, they did their sacred work with it, and when they wanted to return the dinar, when they realized what had happened, they couldn't even return their dinar. It wasn't recognized currency.
Bingo. It's a false bearer bond. Not even created in the country that it was intended for.
Yeah, so this is really sad, because what has happened is a lot of really, really good people, incredibly gifted and talented adepts, are spending so much energy and so much hope and delaying things until this moment comes that they have the money, that all the things that need to get done, which if it was for the highest of all things, great mystery, great spirit would always provide, will always provide, always has been that way. Look at The Secret. Look at, what was that other movie that they made where, that the law of attraction.
Right.
You do create your own reality. And all these people, they were set on this hope. Really smart people, good people. They were all set on this hype. And it's one of the biggest scams that has ever been done.
Gigantic scam. A scam that is going on generations and generations. They've tried to revaluate currency before there were computers, and that was a way that the big companies could destroy local economies. And now that you have international trading, high-frequency trading, and everything else under the sun, it's just not possible for countries to remain on the petrodollar and to have a central bank that's going to be charging them interest on every dollar that they create.
Yeah, I just find this whole thing
You
really
know,
sad.
you've been in business for a long time, and when you looked at what the global currency revaluation was, you realized that it was a bunch of lies.
Oh, I have to tell you, I mean, when I first started to get in my meditations the understandings, and I had these great ideas, and I wanted them funded to help the community and create, a network. You know, when I heard about the dinar and I checked into it, maybe I didn't go far enough with my checking on the psychic realms, but it was all really, really good. It's like, yeah, this I saw a lot of light around it. I mean, and I should have gone further, but I took what I had known, and then I looked at the world at that time, and I thought, this might be a possibility. Stranger things have happened yet in this world, and I do believe in miracles. But I watched this for 12 weeks. I did all the analysis as I talked to my friends in the banking industry. I talked to a lot of people just to really see in this mainframe, this reality which we are functioning, which we wake up to every day. I wanted to see if we could actually bring this manifest into this realm, into this 3D matrix. And the more I looked and the more I studied, the more I realized that that was a nigh on impossibility until everybody basically got together and there was a total reset, a total
Right,
reset.
that eliminated corruption from its root core. We now live in a kleptocracy. Until we take that klepto part out and return to an honor system, a merit system that truly exposes truth. If you are a scammer, you're exposed as that. If you're doing good business, you're exposed as that.
Yeah. So, is it easy to fall into this scam or this trap? Yes, it is,
Because it's
especially.
dreams.
Yes, especially if you're spiritual, because there are so many people who were getting those messages. I
Right.
mean, even the really, really, the ones that could see really, really far, it was like there was some kind of a net over this equation of a reset, and they'd programmed it so beautifully that unless you were really, really savvy, and I think, Andrew, you're probably the only one that was truly able to see through all of it, thanks to your gift of being able to look at sacred neutral, the actual records rather than hearsay from our brothers and sisters in the stars. And we were also talking about that, the truthers that are now out there, our star brothers and sisters. And you were talking about the separation there as well of
The
the
separation of densities
propaganda.
here created a whole new potential out there. And our off-world brothers and sisters, our star brothers and sisters, all have their own perception of humanity through their own witnessing of it, through their taught history, through their learned history, and through their direct experience here. So their perspective, their perception of us is that way. And then they have a moment where they look at us who are creating truth in this massive dirty energy underwear environment of deception, and we have found universal truths that have taught them how to become their own truth organization with inside their own collectives that are based in false perceptions or light body program perceptions, such as the slave personality that comes out in many human beings that have Syrian gray slaving light body technology. They were unaware that their ancients used such types of technology. And to the point where many of the Syrian organizations, the Syrians from Sirius, separated into four different races. And for a way for these races to get back together was to experience the truth here in our world and have a whole new layer of truth be reflected in the galactic perspective of our growth here in this part of the quadrant.
That's so true. When I was looking at, some of the things that we were talking about, because when you go into, like, when you start reading streams, there's so much information that comes out. What I do is I listen to it, and then I look at the different streams of those streams, and then try and give it a little bit of a metaphor of how one could say that in English.
Right.
And
I call them anti-propaganda brigades or off-world truthers. Uh,
yes, and see the separations though amongst those groups themselves when some of them actually realized that they themselves were also suffering with a false history in some of their light body programming through the timeline genocides of their times when they were on this planet.
perception deception filters at the light body level.
Yeah. And that was something when they started seeing us picking it all out and away, or the deceptions and misconceptions, that was when they really started to notice that also in their understandings, some false histories have been put in their light bodies that they're actively using, whereas we're only using parts of that consciously. And they were able to then form their own truth organizations from that. But we were the ones that showed the way on this aspect, weren't we?
We showed them that it was even a potential to share it in a scale in which we've done now. Truther brigades have been in existence for a very long time. Since the beginning of the timeline genocides, they know that there needed to be some way of recording what the truth was, beyond the individual Akashic records of each planet or the universal Akashic record, because that perspective is from that scale of what you're doing. And if you want to get down to what it was like at the human or the Pleiadian or the interactive hands-on layers, you got to have something there that reflects that truth of actually having been there.
And this is where it gets complicated for people who use telepathy.
Or remote viewing.
Or, the RVers the remote viewers out there. Because sometimes when you understand that we're on the fifth timeline, we're 4 paradoxes down, we're now on the fifth, and that things can bleed through from the first, second, and third, and fourth timelines to affect this fifth timeline. And also things can bleed through that will take away from this timeline. And when people start to remote view or to get telepathic messages, one always has to discern what paradox is this coming from, because everything is so multidimensional. And there's a lot of fiction in what people believe is truth. Why is it fiction now? Well, it is truth, but it was only truth for maybe the first, second, third, and fourth paradox, which is still a paradox. So it gets rather complicated because you see a lot of these messages are coming out, and
they don't apply to this paradox.
They're not applying to this timeline.
But you still witness them through your telepathic interceptions because it is part of this information field that we're all in. Because all paradoxes are simultaneously layered over each other and interacting with awareness levels from the planetary level, and the 66 planets that are in the conscious galactic ascension machine are all going through their final stage of, all right, let's end this.
And so I've noticed that when I'm working with the horses and working on the, what happened to specific horses, they have the same issues. Sometimes I get images where I'm like, there's no way you could have drowned on this timeline. It's just, this doesn't happen. And then I look back and I could see that it was actually inserts from different timelines that the horse was carrying forward into this timeline.
It came into the world with an affinity for drowning or a fear from it. Somehow the light body transferred it over to this DNA memory body.
And I believe some of the images then that I was showing, it's a different topic, but it's the same context. It's the same context that all of us are trying to sort out where this is coming from, which timeline. Right. Does this apply to this timeline?
Right. Prophetic visions. A lot of people, I get lots and lots of calls of people that have had visions. And when I go to read those visions, it's from another timeline. But somehow, some way, it bled over into the here and the now, because this here and now is such a porous reality.
Right. So, there's so much truth coming out, but there's so much truth in the fiction. And in the fiction, there is a lot of truth. So,
and the truth is stranger than fiction.
Yes, and so many people try to make sense of what they're seeing and then to put it into the English word or the written word on this timeline. And some of these things, we're not far enough yet to actually put that into words. So then we use things to supply, what we would
supply definition when we are still in supposition.
Exactly, and that's where some of the mistakes are coming in. That's some of the little tricks, that the system has with us. So again, it's all about, the most important thing is not to take sides, to remain as neutral as one can be, and then to read through the information you're getting and to see if it strikes something in your soul. The question is, if it strikes something in your soul, make sure that your soul, especially the pericardium, which contains water that has been programmed by this system, because we're in this physical manifest of this timeline, it's really important to make sure that those waters are clear, so that when you start to listen to things with your soul and you've already got to a certain amount of truth, when it comes to the actual soul, that these waters around your heart don't muddy the perception for the truthful understanding, because they're glimpses, they're pieces of a puzzle. We need to just find the pieces to the puzzle of this timeline
Of
instead of
that
taking
heart space in yourself.
instead of taking the pieces of the puzzles from the other timelines, because they form a wholly different picture.
And you have all the answers in your DNA memory. Even if you're in the wrong DNA body, even with your light body programming, it's all there. You just have to unravel your own personal spiritual Rubik's Cube.
You know, Andrew, you put that so beautifully, and that is so true. Now, how do we ascertain when the Rubik's Cube has all of its pieces, all of the colors on one side perfect? I don't think there is really a way to ascertain that. I mean, so many people ask, how do we know if it's truth? How do we know if we're clean? How do we know? How do we know?
How do you know you're sovereign?
And how do you know you're sovereign? And we covered a lot of the schematics with the dragon teaching of how templates are formed. And then we went into the mystery schools and the understandings of why these were formed. And now we're bringing out this year the alchemy series with teachings and understandings of how you can work with the elements of this planet and learn through working with the elements of this planet to hear the planet's truth vibrating through your soul, and then combining what you have with your soul with the planet together to see how the planet also reacts to the understandings that you might have put together and what you feel might be truth. Work with the elements. The alchemy series will show you, and the fire never lies.
Never. It's always speaking its own truth. You know, we have a garden here on Earth, which is our individual life. But Earth also looks at us as a plot in her grand garden, and she is constantly tending us, constantly nurturing us with her deep waters of life, her love, and her support. And that perspective of the Akashic Record is a whole new layer of truth that brings the human frequency back to the planet frequency. And that is where we step forward from in the common moral code that allows sacred neutral to resolve all issues with karma, all issues with spirit, all issues with technology, so one can find their own right and truthful path into sovereignty and free will while you're relating to a planet that is recording your universal experience and your local Akashic experience for this grand thing called our universe.
And again, to stress what Andrew and I have been discussing these last weeks a lot for this year, one of the most important things now, knowing that our Lightworker grid has been separated, knowing that we can now create our grid with Earth Mother, is stay in that sacred neutral. Really endeavor not to take sides. Because as Andrew said before, it is time for the people who are aware, who are awake, who are beginning their journey, and some that have been on their journey for a really long time. I see these people come together and I see them arguing for their limitations all the time, arguing that their truth is the right thing, arguing. The most important thing at this moment is not to take sides, to understand that every mind has its own journey. Every DNA technology suit has its own history. All of these things put together means that one person might not necessarily be 100% wrong. Maybe they're bringing a piece that you have brought into your own holographic universe, because ultimately it is your experience and yours alone to see and maybe learn and widen. I found with some people, the more knowledge they have and the further they've gone, they don't have much patience for the young ones who sometimes come in with a fresh and extremely neutral way of seeing things. And I've seen some of these young people who have newly awakened have far, far clearer and better understandings than those that have been fighting the system for so long. Because they have been fighting the system so long, they've forgotten what it is to be able to just go straight to source and see it directly. They've had to do so much just to get to that place, whereas now these guys, they're coming in fresh. They don't have some of the, a lot of these old wounds and injuries. They don't have some of these experiences that, quite frankly, they're not going to have, because they've woken up in another frame, another time. What we're having happening right now with the separation of densities is literally the frequency of people. Some people who are really dense and they've chosen this for their life, and this is how they're going to do it, like those chemtrail pilots, for example. And then you have the others. You have these teenagers that are just awakening and they're having these amazing experiences, but they can't really get a hold of these conspiracy guys because what their truth is, and which is might be pristine and clean, is not as these people have seen it to be so. One thing to remember is that everything is changing, everything is malleable, and when it sits right in your soul and you know that it's serving all, you can pretty well much say, okay, this is going to be serving people, and endeavor not to be political, not to take sides. If this works for you and it resonates with you, go for it. If it doesn't resonate, don't judge.
Exactly.
Because there again, you will be falling into polarity. The key for the light worker grid is to stay in neutrality. If it's not resonating, fine, move on, but don't make a whole big deal about it, because then you have taken that precious energy that you've saved and worked on to be so clear and so clean and in sacred neutral, and you've just pummeled it with a bunch of judgment.
And then you have to be willing to take the gifts that Earth offers back to you for the work that you have done. And that is the other side about this light worker grid that's now there. Those that have been handling this for so long, it's not the time to step back. It's the next time where you heal your wounds and you call upon a local friend to help nurture those wounds. So that when you go back into it, that friend or those new people that are coming into grid working have a better understanding of what is going to be there. Okay, it's going to be very easy for someone to do special work on a special place and not realize that they're actually tapping into the system of domination and control grid because they're not fully disentangled themselves.
And this is the key, not to go around judging people. Oh, they're truth, they're not, they've been infiltrated, they're dark, they're light. Come on, guys. I mean, how
Exactly.
many times have you had a good day or a bad day? How many times has the system just screwed you over? Like, your computer doesn't work, your phone's down, you've got no reception, every traffic light is red. These things happen, and not everybody can be 100% all of the time. So when you see online, you see these bloggers and they're fighting amongst each other, or this is wrong and that person's this or that, don't become a part of that. Try to remain neutral. Be the observer and look at it for what it is, and understand that we're all in this together, every single one of us. Understanding, unconditional love is what is needed. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say it at all. Why you wanted to say that? Look into yourself why you felt so strongly to break this person down who you before had thought was really good. Maybe they're going through a hard time. Maybe just send them love. Just like we do with the governments. We revoke them, but we still send love to those people whose only way to survive and get the benefits perhaps for their children that are sick is to work with the government.
Right.
Don't be bashing these people.
It's also really important that when you're observing material as a neutral witness, that some is meant by program to affect the neutral observer back into polarity. So over-observance is a horrible thing for a light worker to deal with because they become burnt out, stretched out, watchers in every different angle. There are many blogger sites that give you 12, 15, 18 streams of information, one from a channel, one from an RV guy, one from this, one from that, one from so on, and you got all this amalgamation of information there, and you're observing it and observing it and observing it and not getting your own little golden key and your own little golden heart. You're looking at the system's keys and the system resolution. We are not here to resolve the system. The system resolves itself by us pulling our energy out of it. So being able to disentangle from observed information so you do not have a habit pattern that sneaks in and goes, oh, I got to look at this. I got to find out this update. That's where the GCRV stuff just sinks into people because it's affecting them at their dream level. The same thing that comes into those people that are constantly seeing chemtrails everywhere. You cannot over-observe. You can over-observe a phenomenon, which will get you trapped into over-observance where all of your energy is drained away in that observance.
That's correct. And, there are so many people out there doing the great work, doing the good work. And a lot of these people, they become awake, they have their revelations, and then they go online to see if others are having the same experience.
And that's where the deceivers lie.
And yes, and sometimes, they land on things which the system is obviously remote viewed that this is going to happen, pops up whatever that is totally discerning and leading them away, okay, from what their actual true experience is. Am I saying don't look? No. What I'm saying is remain practicing with what you have and see what you see, because the only thing that you have as your own experience is truly your own truth and your own knowingness. Everything else is just philosophy until you've experienced it yourself. So there are people that talk about ghosts and have all these ideas about things and what ghosts are like. Well, I'll tell you, if you've never actually communicated with a ghost, or a ghost has walked through you, or if you've never had that kind of experience with ghosts, you're just a philosopher. And you can write your blogs as long as you want. But those people that really are involved with ghosts, you're not helping them at all. You're just philosophizing of what you think or what you've seen. But until that is actually your own knowingness, that your cellular structures have had that experience, it's not real. Because the only thing that is real in this whole hologram, guys, is the experience. Everything else is just the hologram.
Right. And the individual things of the experiences are just data that create the total experience that we come out with when we are done. Done with what? Done with fraud time. Done with system of domination and control. Done with sovereignty being given away through tacit consent. And back into a point where we can co-create in neutrality with each other to heal, to find harmony, to find union, communion, and be able to bless ourselves with a purity and not the dirty energy underwear that we are trading around with unprotected technology, be it a psychic technology or a physical technology. There are whole new realms within our grasp if we just choose to dance a little bit with the co-creation